Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good, Frank. Welcome back.
Welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks, right?
It's been a couple weeks. Why don't you share with us where you've been?
I've been down in Cancun drinking.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
No.
What else did you do in Cancun, Frank?
Besides drink? Yeah, I went to Dr. Joe's advanced workshop.
Hell yeah.
7
Dr.
days.
Joe Dispenza.
7 days, yeah.
Love that guy.
Yeah, I tell you what, it was wild.
Yeah.
I remember going there. So you go into this auditorium, and there was 1,500 people. And it was like a rock concert. Like, you had all the screens up, and like in the beginning, you had all these, like they were playing like dance music, like house music.
Yep.
And it was interesting. I was listening to it, and I'm like just sitting at my chair, bobbing my head. There's a handful of people like dancing, like they're at a rock show, like a
Concert.
a rave or something.
Rave.
By day 2, I was up there bouncing, bam, like I was doing like,
Feeling the energy.
Yeah, and it's not kind of like my thing,
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so the first day I'm getting to know people. By the second day, third day, you're hugging everyone you see, and it wasn't.
That's great.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like you felt like you were all unified.
So this was the advanced retreat that he does, right?
Yeah, 7 days.
Okay.
And it's pretty much you go in, you don't really know what's going to happen other than you're going to be meditating. So he goes into the science very deeply. He's taken this idea that's been around for millennia, but he's packaged it pretty amazing from how I perceive it. And he goes and explains all the meditations of what we're doing as we're doing them. He doesn't jump ahead. So it's almost like the first day we were there, we did a meditation, which I was familiar with, doing his online workshops, and I was familiar with that stuff. And then the second day, we were doing meditations all day long, breaking up, explaining the science. And he's leading us up to this moment when we ended up doing like this pineal gland meditation. And I had no idea. 4.5 hours. And you go into it, you don't know how long it's going to be. It did feel like 2 hours. It felt pressing to me. But when I got out of it, I didn't know it was 4.5 hours until someone told me, he goes, "Do you realize that was 4.5 hours?" I'm like, no way. It didn't feel like 4.5 hours, but it also didn't feel like 20 minutes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
And what he did is he makes you sit with yourself, and you want to get up. There were people screaming, a handful of people. Like I'm like, what the hell is happening? But then I went right back into it. Like you learn to just get distracted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, go back into your meditation. And yeah, it was wild because you have to sit with yourself. You have to sit with your thoughts.
That's a hard thing to do.
So what you're learning to do is train your body. You train your body because that's the emotional recipient of what we are. So we can actually replay and redo our emotions. We can then control our lives. So when the mind controls the body, it's controlling the emotion of the body. But when the body says, no, get up, move around, that starts to control the world and our mind, so to speak. So these techniques were pretty amazing.
See, that's so awesome to hear. Dr. Joe Dispenza, for me personally, he's been a huge influence. Yeah. I mean, when I first saw his program Rewired on Gaia a few years ago, man, I still rewatch it to this day. I love it. So Dr. Joe has this incredible talent of bridging the spiritual, the mystics, the techniques, used in, Eastern cultures, et cetera, society, and bring it together with the science, and really breaks it down for a way that it's all very digestible for us that were raised in the West, is probably a good way to say it. And he also helps get those who are very skeptical about this type of practice over that hump, purely through the science. Yeah. And that's why I love Dr. Joe. So if I have somebody, who's on the fence about this stuff, or, they're very analytical or thinking mind type of individual, Dr. Joe's one of the first people that I always recommend, hey, start with this.
Yeah, because he's got a team of biologists and other doctors, physicians, that everyone from neurologists to biologists studying these types of techniques in meditation. And so it's not that he's saying this works. It's the actual data, the information's coming out of the lab. So if you're a scientist or a doctor, you're looking at the information. It's not that he's giving a perspective on it. This is what's happening. So you can look at it and deny it. That's your right. But if you're a scientist or a biologist, it's very difficult to deny. And there's
something here.
There's something here. And so knowing the information is what gets you doing it. But once you do it, now you know what the hell he's talking about. It's like, wow. And it was. So right now when I get into my meditations, what I didn't realize before, I was meditating for years, my energy, like when I would give my attention to my heart, I could feel it to a degree. But I realized I wasn't getting the energy up into my heart and into my mind. I was staying throughout my body, and most of it was in my lower energy centers. But he was doing these techniques where we moved it up. And once it moved up, I could feel this electromagnetic field coming off my heart. And then it was so easy to shut out any negative thought. It was almost like negative thought didn't exist. It's like flying in an airplane. Yeah, you're not in traffic. I can maybe look down as I'm getting close to the airport and see the traffic on the freeway as I'm passing over, about to land, but I'm not in it.
You're above it.
So when you get that energy up into your heart and up into your fourth center, your fifth, your sixth, seventh, and then eighth, all of a sudden, all these things are easy. It's when they're down here, the difficulty is.
And that's where most of us lie.
Yeah.
It is in this lower vibration, is in the, these lower energy
survival,
centers.
yeah.
Exactly, the survival centers. And these core three things, this is why we only care about food and sex. Is because, but I'm serious. It's very like a low vibrational survival mechanism. Yeah. And so
worry about money and everything else that supports the food and sex.
But you know what I mean? Like it keeps you very low level, you know? And so that's, I don't want to say it's the easiest thing to recognize, but these are, it's harder to bring the energy up into these four centers than keep the energy down here where it always kind of has been.
From that vantage point, it can seem that way, but once you actually do get it up, so it's about overcoming yourself, and that's the whole thing here. So, even when I came back, when I was there, by day 3, I was on a high, all right? I remember when I actually started getting the energy up to my heart, I'm just sitting there meditating, and tears are just rolling out like a waterfall, And everyone's experiencing this, right? Some people were even loud. It was that was interesting to me. But so all of a sudden you're in this place and you're staying there. Again, I'm in a room with 1,500 people every day. You started 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. One day we started at 4. We weren't getting out of it to 7:30, almost 8 o'clock every day. Breaks in between, but you talk with people and like-minded and stuff like that. So it's easy to stay there. Now, when I came home, I was telling Mike a couple of things happened with work, and as somebody was explaining to me, it was somewhat blown in proportion. At least I took it that way. It also, I went back down to survival. And I tell you what, it hurt worse because I was up here. But what happened was, when that happened, I went into an hour meditation. It was the weirdest thing. I could feel the energy vibrating and my body was shaking. Mm-hmm. But once I got the energy back to my heart, all of a sudden the situation I was looking at it had all the solution dialed in. When the energy's at my heart, situations, circumstances are always going to happen. We can't control that. But now I'm like, oh, I know how to deal with this. But down here, I'm like, motherfucker, God, why can't people take care of themselves? Why did I gone for a week and this is what happens? Mm-hmm. And then once I got the energy back up here, and I did it fairly quickly and fairly easy because I was doing it for that week long, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's just relax. Let's calm down. And then all of a sudden, the problem wasn't a problem anymore. So these techniques, the show that me and Mike have, Perspective Shift Now, is here to offer up different perspectives, different ways of looking at stuff, but for the one reason is to actually live our life in a more unified field, easier, not just for the people around us, but for us. If you actually take care of yourself, you simultaneously take care of others. And that's the thing I learned is when my energy's up here, I don't want anything. I want for nothing. All of a sudden, I want to give my energy to the guy next to me, the woman next to me. I want to give it to everyone else. Down here, I got to grab everything I can. I got to stock it away. Up here, I just want to give it.
Well, let me ask you this, Frank. So you were saying the details is kind of what I heard back. So you come back, and now we're in the real world, if you will,
slam back into the matrix, as exactly.
You call it. We're slammed back into the matrix. Yeah. So when you're at that point, and like you're saying, you can feel that lower vibration, that lower energy level.
And it hurt more before when I went because I was up here most of the time, And when I clashed down, it was like
you could tell.
It was like you're talking to God, and then the devil just pulls you by the ankle and says, "Hey, we need to talk."
So, would you agree? Pretty much everything that kind of goes on in our life is essentially just details.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter about the details.
Yep.
More about that core, how we feel, and then we start to experience these details differently.
So essentially, this is what we're learning to do: is controlling our emotions and feelings. When you control the brainwave frequency we have, we control our output of frequency on the body. So once we learn to control this, and it comes through practice, right? Because we
daily practice.
Yeah, we can we can have philosophy on this. We can have intellectual discussion on it, and it's all good because it led me here. But until I actually do it, it's like talking about working out. Until you actually do it, the talk is cheap. There's nothing there. But once you enact it, and once you do it, and there's no end to it. Like even Dr. Joe keeps coming up with new forms of meditation, new ways of doing it, new music, new this, which take us deeper into the mystic. And that's what we did, a 4.5-hour meditation. And I'll tell you what, I told this to somebody. So, Mom and Dad, I hope your ears are closed, but I did ayahuasca like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I ever did a psychedelic. And it was more for the mystic experience. It wasn't like I was trying to escape anything. I was just curious.
Totally. And
I did that. It was, I probably talked about this before on the show before, and it was interesting. It was really interesting. I saw things I'd never seen before, and I had seen fractal patterns and stuff like that. And then I also went down into the depths and was tortured. I think I told you about that. But
I remember.
I was being tortured, but I also knew I wasn't going to die. It was almost like, a Navy SEAL in boot camp going through some type of torturing device just to know what it feels like. But I also know the people doing it to him love them. Mm-hmm. They're the friends. So it was very uncomfortable, but my fear of death wasn't there. But it was very uncomfortable. So when I went into this thing for 4.5 hours, which only felt like 2 hours, I went beyond the mystic experience of ayahuasca. This was better than anything I've ever taken.
See, that's great.
Oh my God. It was just phenomenal. I couldn't feel my body. But when he says, come back to the room, my body felt like a lead weight. I couldn't even move my arms. I'm like, oh my God. It was like atrophy. I'm like, oh my God.
I love that.
But I completely left the planet. I would come and go, but yet it was better than ayahuasca. And so we use our electromagnetic field energy to go up, and this the thing here is tapping on the pineal gland. And then as we expand the pineal gland, it actually creates electric magnetic charge. It's negative and positive. And then it expands. It creates more of a field of, a magnetic field. Mm-hmm. That magnetic field then produces the chemicals for the body. Not the other way around. So medicine will offer up chemistry. Ayahuasca will offer up chemistry. But I actually received the chemistry through my electromagnetic field, which I produced. And again, it took me a little time to get there. But once I did, and that's why I had it laid out. We did this on day 5, I think. So we had 4 something days prior to this morning meditation. So it was synced up perfectly. He knew what he was doing, obviously, without telling us. And then we're going to do the pineal awakening meditation. He didn't say it's going to be 4.5 hours. We just went in there, and he briefly told us what to experience, what we're going to do, and that was it. Next thing you know, we were in it.
So what you were just talking about remind me of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi story that you told me about the Beatles when the Beatles came to him and were talking about it, and they were describing these different levels that they've achieved, through LSD, mushrooms, etc. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi says, hey, let me show you another way to get there.
It's another way.
This is the way, exactly what you just said. Our body can produce all of these chemicals, and we have that ability through, meditation.
We do.
Pressing on the pineal gland, creating that pressure, that charge, creating that electricity to produce DMT, all of these powerful chemicals,
well, that's where it comes from.
And that's what we're experiencing. Yeah. So mystics have been talking about this for millennia.
Yeah, exactly. And now someone like a Dr. Joe Dispenza has actually put it and packaged it. I say, put it together, explains the science, and then puts in the practical. Because he even says, it's not enough to know. We have to do. Absolutely. This is the time to do it. Now, And that's the brilliant thing about it. As we start to do this and exercise, that people actually understand what's going on. So, and that's it was an amazing experience. And now I know how to get there. It doesn't mean I'm always there. Like I said, I was taken off, bounced back into reality with stuff happening. It was very easy to stay there. But now the work begins. And that is the work. Like, oh, I was like, I'm upset. It's like, and, someone's like, is it not working? I'm like, it's working. But I don't expect to work out once in a month and to expect development. It's a consistent thing. And now I'm in the real world doing it. I don't want to escape to a cave and just meditate my whole life just to feel good, because that will get old. It's to bring it back. But all of a sudden, I was smacked up against the wall. I'm like, oh, shit, now I got to practice this. Yep. I remember the first night when that came out, I told Karen, like, I got to go. She's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to the park and doing a walk of meditation. Now, this is how this is how I know I've changed, all right? I fell back into this weird place, but I had to get out of it. And that weird place wasn't like, if it was a year ago, that was my normal state. So, like, no one noticed it. But for me, I could feel it. So we do these walking meditations. To other individuals looking on, it could look a little weird. Because you sit there, you start out standing in a posture straight, spine straight, and you close your eyes. And I use eye mask now to block any light. And then you go in, and it's a guided meditation. But then there's a point where you get to the energy, your heart, and your mind, bring it to 1 or 4, 1, however he wants it, heart, mind. You can actually feel the electromagnetic field growing. And then he wants you to open your eyes, and he starts playing like almost like tribal music. Dum, dum, dum,
Got some beat to it.
Yeah, so you feel like you're like energized. Now you want to walk in the present moment, experiencing your future self. So you want to act as if you already have it. Because then you're walking around. I'm at this park where there's a lake. I'm walking around there, and you're in this trance. I'm aware of people around me, but I'm just looking at the horizon, and people are like, what? Yeah, but I'm like, I don't care. And this is how I know I changed, because if this was me beforehand, I would have waited to dark before everyone left. I would have not done this in the park. I
love this so much.
But I'm like, you know what? The way I feel matters way more than my ego and people looking at me.
And you're affecting each one of them as soon as their way.
Perhaps, maybe I'm freaking them out.
Oh, you could not.
The cops show up. Is this dude on drugs? It's like
somebody help me.
Yeah, it's like,
this guy's looking at the horizon.
Because at the very end, so this walk of meditation goes about hour 15 minutes. I forgot what it was. And at the end, the very end, you lay down on your back just on the earth, wherever it is. So I happen to be on the grass.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, you're going to lay down. I'm like, yeah, I don't really care what anyone thinks. And you lay down, you finish up that way. And it's powerful because it's teaching. Like, I could sit down and meditate in a chair, and I can have control of my situation, put the headphones on, do everything. I can shut out all my senses, put the eye mask on. So visual, it's very easy to go in. But we weren't meant to do that. We were meant to engage, right? So, yeah, you do the 20-minute to an hour meditation in the morning. It depends what kind of mood you're in. You want to really get out of that. But I want to be meditating all day when I'm at work. So this walking meditation trains us to do that. Because my eyes wide open, I'm in a trance. I'm doing this. But now I'm actually moving, and I'm maintaining this feeling. Where the first time I did it, I was getting distracted. Because I was on the beach with 1,500 people walking up and down.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. So the first one, I'm like, this is weird. But by the second one, I saw everyone. I was aware not to walk into anyone, but I was just staring straight at the horizon, and I could feel my energy rising in my body. I could feel it in my heart. I could feel it in my mind. I could just feel the energy feeling. And I'm like, wow, I never knew I would experience that. It's because we are technology, and what people like Dr. Joe and others out there, but talk about him on this podcast, he's teaching us how to activate that technology. And the way I explain it is everyone has a cell phone. It's heavy enough to hold papers down on your desk, but it wasn't meant to be a paperweight. But we're using our technology as if we're using a cell phone as a paperweight. Yes, it will hold paper down if the wind blows. But now we're learning how to activate this technology, getting the energy field, electromagnetic field, getting electrified in order to produce the chemicals we need to feel great about.
Great analogy with the phone, too, because that's what we are, guys. Our body is an instrument, and we are a receiver. We are a transmitter. That's what... So science has proven. They have gone in and they have tried to find our memories in the brain. Excuse me. They have tried to find our memories in the brain. So they have gone in and looked, okay, where are our memories stored? And we have proven... scientifically proven that memories, these are not stored in the brain. In fact, they shoot off all over the brain. And so we have determined that our thoughts, our memories, they're actually outside of our body in this cloud.
Or they're locked into your body tied to emotion.
There you go.
So you hear a song that you haven't heard since high school, like the prom, and all of a sudden your body responds to it in that way. So the emotion is locked in the body. And that's kind of it. So when the body, we're actually starting to, what we want to do is, you got great emotions, use that. But when you actually stay in the present moment, you actually tell the body what emotion to have rather than the body responding to the music. Because it could have been a song from the prom, and right in the middle of the song, your girl left you.
That's super sad.
You listen to like a Journey song, and she's like, "I'm out of here." It's like, Jesus, I can't listen to Journey anymore. And all my friends, stop believing, yeah.
Crying.
All of a sudden, your body, because your body feels it. So it's about getting...
No, that's true. When anytime we feel something like an old memory, that's your body reliving that moment.
Emotion, yeah.
Yeah, and you're reliving it, and your body does not know the difference.
No, it's a recording.
So when you feel yourself falling into a past memory, a past, horror, remind yourself, wow, I'm putting my body through that same experience again. It's just unnecessary.
It kind of reminds me like, I don't know what podcast it was, but... We had a viewer, I think her name was Kimberly.
Okay.
Talked about that. She goes, I'm going to have to paraphrase the question, but she says, how do we not have a conversation with ourselves and get beyond where we are? So in other words, because part of the podcast we were talking about, which the clip she was talking about was, we're not actually having a conversation with ourselves. And so if you went further into it, what we're actually having a conversation with is our old recording. So if I was having a conversation with the recording of myself, the response will never change because that's already solidified into a recording. So come into the present moment and get rid of that. What you do is press a new play button or a record button rather than a play button. So when you have a conversation with yourself, all you're doing is playing a play button. You're not going to get a new response from that because it's a recording. So we have to elevate above that to see the situation.
Well, and then on the science level, how Dr. Joe would explain that, and correct me if I'm wrong since you were just there, but that recording, we're developing new recordings. So we create new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And so we have these old neural pathways that are saying, okay, I can't do this because I'm this weight, or because I look like this, or because I grew up from a family like this. Well, whoa. That track, that playback that Frank's talking about continues to press play until you re-record a new track. Or, as Dr. Joe would state, is create a new neural pathway. Well, there is a way to accomplish this. Or just because I came from this family does not mean I can't.
No.
Or whatever that limiting idea may be, you have the ability to create a new neural pathway. And that's what Frank and I are talking about here, is creating new neural pathways and seeing that we have been limiting ourselves day in, day out by the stories or the recordings, these playbacks that we allow ourselves to continue to press play.
Yeah, and what I liked about this retreat I went on is he shows us how to, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So having an intellectual conversation about getting over that is easier said than done when it's in an intellectual study. But once you go into these meditations and you're doing these, you breathe completely out of your nose, you squeeze your perineum, your lower ab, and you squeeze it really hard, and then you slowly breathe up, bring it into your chest. Once you bring it to your chest, then you squeeze your chest, you squeeze your back, and then you move that energy now up into your brain, pushing out your pineal gland. Guess what you're not thinking about? You're not thinking about all the silly shit out there because you can't. So all of a sudden, you get that. Now the energy starts moving up to the heart. Now when you revisit that old program, erase it.
It's very easy to reprogram.
Trying to get over a problem in the same state you're in, you'll never do it. So doing the work, meditating, doing whatever you can to do to get out of that state. Then when you bring the state back in, so when I have the energy up here in these levels, all of a sudden it's not about sticking my head in the sand. It's about when they introduce that situation and circumstance, it no longer is problematic. There's a solution attached to it. Mm-hmm. But I cannot get a solution from the recorder, because the recorder is just recording what it knows, what it knows, what it knows, what it knows. But it only knows what it knows. But if I need to know something different to get over it, I have to stop pressing play and move into a whole nother present future moment. And how do I do that? The work. It really is. Go into meditation and do these type of techniques. You know, you can look up on, YouTube for Joe Dispenza and stuff like that. I can go over them briefly, but it's best to get the information from him because I'm not him.
Absolutely.
I could just I could tell you what I experienced, and it was amazing. It really was. Now, when I listen to these other people talk about this stuff, now I have a better insight to what they're talking about. And even they've been doing it, but to me, again, this is my perspective. He showed me personally how to do it, and now I'm like, oh, okay, because it's not about talking. He'll talk about what's going on scientifically from the body, but then we had to do it. So we meditated about 35 to 40 hours in that week.
See, that is...
Yeah.
Well, so one thing, and this is a little background on Dr. Joe, but I want to explain how Dr. Joe got into this type of work. Do you want to talk about that, or you want me to? You
can talk about it, yeah.
So, Dr. Joe...
I did enough talking.
Yeah, no. Dr. Joe, back in the day, essentially what happened was... He was always getting involved with this work, at a certain point in his life, learning more about the spiritual side of himself, etc., and was aware of these practices. Well, anyways, he was a big bike rider, and he was riding in part of like a 5K, a 10K, or something like that.
It was a triathlon. Yeah.
Triathlon, yeah. There you go. So he's coming around the corner, and the police officer who's watching it, the turn, is signaling him to turn. And so Joe rounds the corner like nothing. Well, I guess, oncoming traffic, a car actually was coming. And so Joe Dispenza hits this car dead on. They collide.
Well, no, she hit him from behind.
She hit him from behind?
Yeah, she hit him from
behind.
She
hits him from behind.
It was a truck, yeah.
And he goes flying, right?
Yeah, he goes flying up, yeah.
Yeah, he goes flying up. So
lands on his back. Yeah.
Lands on his back, breaks all of his back, right?
I think it was like 6 vertebrae, but it was
something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where they brought him in, he had to get opinion over opinion by all these different doctors. And they essentially came to him and said, hey, you'd be lucky if you were to walk again. We don't think you're going to walk again.
And we recommend this type of surgery where they put the rod up his spine.
Very serious surgery. Evasive surgery.
It would have taken him out of the game, if you will.
Yeah. And so Dr. Joe, says to himself, he's sitting there and he's thinking,
curious mind of his.
but he declines the surgery after thinking about this.
Yeah.
And he actually tells, the staff, hey, I'm going to walk out of here this year. And the staff is like, or like these doctors are like, no, dude, this isn't how this works.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm confident my body can heal.
Yeah.
And so he sits on his stomach for 6, 7, 8 months or whatever it is.
No, it was
right?
like 6 weeks.
Was it 6 weeks?
6 weeks. And what he essentially did was he imagined, starting at the base, imagining rebuilding his vertebrae. And he gets to the first one, and then he's like, oh, shit, might never walk again. Boom. Then he start over. Then he would wake it up to like the 3rd vertebrae. Oh, my God. And then he start over again. He kept starting over. He sat with himself. He sat with his mind. And then, according to his story, it took him about 6 weeks to get fully through his spine and healing all the vertebrae. And within 8 weeks, 2 weeks after he finally got through that, his spine was healed. So he had to maintain what he called a positive outlook, but he had to start over and over. So, like it's anyone knows, like Mike's a musician. You go into a studio and you start playing. You could be halfway through the song as a guitar player. You got to start from beginning. You can't just kick it off from here. You got to start from the beginning. Cut, take again.
From the top.
Start from the top. So he would start from the top, and it took him about 6 weeks. And this is how he came to his work. And then he started studying neurology, and he spent his life doing this. So he was 25 when he did that. So
He was only 25 when that happened?
Yeah, and he's about to turn.
Wow, for some
if
reason, I thought it was
I'm
in his
mistaken,
mid-30s.
his birthday's in April. He's going to be turning 60 years old. I think he was born in 62.
Well, I saw an interview with him, and he said as soon as he healed himself, he goes, or he said, if I, he told himself, if I heal myself, I'm going to spend the rest of my life dedicating my work or myself to this work.
And he
did.
He's living by his word. Yeah.
But I mean, guys, that is truly powerful stuff, and we can do this on a number of levels with multitudes of things.
And he didn't even know the science behind it. Yeah. At the time.
See, that's so cool.
And so he just did it. But to him, it was like he was up.
But he had
the wall.
some interest, like.
Oh, he was studying the mind control type patterns and controlling the brain.
How all this works.
Yeah, he was already a student of it, but this made him dive into it, then actually do studies. And
I just wanted to bring that back.
Story
up.
It's great.
Just
great
because
story.
like it shows you like the commitment and like the what Dr. Joe went through in order to bring this to the people. And
so
it's cool.
because he practiced it prior to teaching it and telling everyone you got to do this. It's almost like, people look at a lot of people that like, oh, tell you to do this, and it's like, well, where did they start? So if somebody started like poor and they're teaching you how to be rich, you're going to listen. But if somebody was like a prince of, some country, it's like, I'll teach you how to be rich. It's like, yeah. Well,
nice try, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice try, dude.
Yeah, so when you've gone through the journey and it's like, okay, how many people do you know overcame spinal injury like that and now can walk and the guy's in great physical shape? I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Give this
that's why I just figued the backstory was well worth bringing up.
I got like an ache in my toe.
I can't go to work.
I don't feel the toe anymore. It's working.
I'm so tired. But that's like what we all do. We take these little things and we make them a big idea in our heads, and we say, oh, we can't do this. I got the back pain. I can't
There's no
do
more
this.
excuse now.
Yeah.
You either do it or you don't.
That's it. And guys, on a number of levels, we've been making excuses our entire life.
Yeah.
And it's when we become aware of ourselves, we start to take responsibility for literally every aspect in our life. And this is part of the awakening moment. And it's when you realize you have been creating everything you've been experiencing.
When you take responsibility, you then and then only will you be able to shift. And the brilliant thing about being alive now is this information is readily available.
Everywhere.
You think about when Dr. Joe went through this, that information wasn't readily available, but he still did it. Right now it's like, people come up to me and like, oh, I don't feel good. And I'll gear them down towards a path. But it's about like, what do I do? I'm like, well, it's not necessarily what you do. It's how you feel about what you do. So look into stuff, right? Like I'm drawn to this. And I'm drawn to other things too. To me, it's a practice of different modalities, but yet it's because I'm seeking expansion in a more controlled way. I'm going to expand either way. I'm either going to expand it to greater poverty, greater disease, or greater wealth, or greater health. The universe doesn't care, but we get to choose what direction we go in. So I'm at a point in my life, like I am pointing my finger and my nose in the same direction. I'm walking there. And then there's people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and other people that actually help me guide me. They make it easier for me. But I still have to do the work. Sitting there talking about meditation doesn't mean you're meditating. Correct. And when I came back and I fell into that slumber, I got up off the couch and I went to the park and I did it and it worked. But then I had to do it again the next day and I had to keep doing it next day. Just like I breathe, drink, and eat every day, I have to do this every day. If I stop, I'm going to fall off the wagon. But if I fall off the wagon, so who cares? I know what the wagon looks like. I know how to get back on the wagon.
That's it. The fact that you knew you were in that lower vibration and you had that awareness, that should be everybody's goal, which is, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I got control of this. I don't need this world to keep pulling me down, because the world will fall less and less apart as it doesn't need to get your attention. Like the world's getting your attention because it's falling apart. And so when things start to come together, you need less and less attention on them.
Hey, if you're hovering above the ground, an earthquake will not affect you. So when you're attached to the lower extremities, everything affects you. So it's about learning, getting the energy out of our survival and up into our creative, into our heart. And when you do that, you'll know what I'm talking about. So what me and Mike show is perspective shift. It's just to encourage, but you got to do the work. Until you do the work, what me and Mike are talking about is all bullshit. And we have people they'll comment on that. This guy obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm like, from that level, yeah, it sounds like I'm nuts.
Yeah.
It really does. So they're not wrong. But once they get up here, they're like, oh, I get it.
That really is a thing.
Yeah, I was that person where I'm like, that's full of shit. I wouldn't comment because I ultimately knew at some point that's true. And in the beginning, I read every book. I was very philosophical. I was very intellectual about it. And I practiced it occasionally, you know. And when I practiced, it felt good. And then I'm like, oh, I am, yeah.
That right there is the definition of a 3D.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where all right, I've got the house, I've got the picket fence, I've got the family. Why aren't I happy?
Yeah.
You know? But really knowing, hey, this is all within. Frank and I, we want you to find yourself. Because as soon as you find yourself, you no longer need the world outside of you to tell you who you are.
Yeah, and guess what? You'll get the house with the white picket fence.
Oh, it all comes with, yeah.
But you know what it is? You're not really going to, you don't want it. It will happen. In other words, like people do these like law of attraction things. Like I did this law of attraction. I put my mind out to get tickets to go to the Phoenix Open, the golf tournament. And they didn't care whether they went or not, and they got a ticket. I'm like, you should treat everything in life like that. You should treat your job, money, your house, because when you need your house, when you need your wife, you're going to smother her. You're going to actually be so attached to the house, when something goes wrong, you're going to go down with it. When you need money, you're never going to give it away, and you're going to start the flow of it. When you need something, you're going to hurt the thing in which you need, and it's going to hurt you back. But don't have wants for anything. But when you get to this level, you'll know what me and Mike are talking about. When you're in the heart, all of a sudden everything you have, you just give away, because your heart's a magnetic field. It keeps attracting more of it. It really does. So
it really does.
It's awesome. I think it was by day 5 after we did that meditation, we went into a comprehensive healing meditation. And I remember you would just sit now. This is everyone I talked to, it was their favorite meditation. Why? Because it was no longer about me feeling good. It was about generating enough energy into my heart to where when I focus on the person, I was laying on the floor and we had our eyes closed, so my energy was coming out of my hands. It was all about healing that person. We didn't know what disease they had because we just came in and everyone just found a chair to stand behind, and we stand behind and we sat, and there was 4 and 4 and the person laying down on the floor. We didn't know who they were. We didn't know what disease. You don't want to know anything. You want to step into the unknown. No body, no thing, no one. And you just keep the energy here in your heart and your mind. And all of a sudden, I could feel the electromagnetic field coming off my body. And that was the most amazing thing, because it was no longer about me. It was about somebody else. When you take the attention off yourself, life is amazing. But when you're like, oh, I got this. Yeah, I can't really make it. I got this situation. And we wonder why we're miserable. Because when I give attention to myself, I'll find shit that's wrong with me. Everything. You stand in the mirror long enough, you're going to find something. Get out of the mirror. Get out of your way. And guess what? When I get out of my way, everything that I would look in the mirror to look at takes care of itself. So we give my attention to somebody else, but get up into that heart, and then it becomes easy. And then stuff doesn't stop coming. Speaking of get up or getting in from the heart, let's play that Dr. Joe clip that we have. Yeah, let's do that, man. All right. Let's pull it up. We're going to roll this part of a Dr. Joe clip here. That way you guys can kind of take a look, and then Frank and I want to chat a little bit more about it. Yeah, because he says it a lot better than I do. All right, here we go. All right. It's your perception, right? So then the stronger the emotion you feel from some outer experience in your life, the more altered you feel, the more the brain freezes the frame and takes a snapshot. Well, now you're freezing a frame in the outer environment. But if you're truly in the present moment and you know exactly what you want, and you begin to teach your body emotion, start practicing opening that heart, it's amazing what happens. The moment that heart begins to open, we've measured this so many times, Lewis, on a scan, on a real-time brain scan. When the heart moves into this kind of rhythm, when you're feeling frustration, when you're feeling impatient, when you're feeling resentment, you are stepping on the gas pedal
and you're stepping on the brake at the same time, and the heart is pumping against a closed system, and it causes an erratic beat. It becomes incoherent. And energy literally leaves the heart. Now, you no longer believe in your future. You can't put your heart into your future. You can't trust the outcome because there's no energy there. It's being used and consumed somewhere else, so energy is leaving the brain as well. But once energy starts to move into the heart, we've seen this so many times, and it starts to beat in this rhythm, like banging a drum or dropping a pebble in water, pebble after pebble. The heart begins to create a wave of energy right to the brain, like taking a big sheet and going like that. And then all of a sudden you see this wave, and the brain gets this rush of energy, and that change in brain wave patterns, that change, that wave is carrying information. And the person starts to get a very clear idea. They see their future very clearly. Now that energy is causing them to move into very coherent alpha brainwave patterns, which is the state of creation. This is when you no longer hear the voice in your head that's talking to you that you listen to and believe is the truth.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, whatever that is. That's called
the
the default mode. It suppresses the default mode network, and the next thing you know, you start seeing in pictures and images. You start dreaming. And that's the imagination. That's the creative state. So now you start naturally imagining the heart is the creative center. We got to put our heart into our future. It better be open and activated. So now when you start falling in love with your future, oxytocin is released in the brain and in the heart. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals another chemical called endothelial-derived relaxing factor. And just like when your sexual organs get filled with blood because you're aroused, the same thing happens here as it would happen somewhere else. And literally the arteries in the heart and lungs engorge, and now your heart feels full and it's thumping in order, and you're in the present moment. Now, once that happens and it's beating in rhythm, the heart produces an external magnetic field up to 3 meters wide. Now, you're in survival, you're drawing from the field and turning into chemistry. When you get energy in the heart, it's causing a change in the brain, and all of a sudden it's resetting the baseline for trauma, and now here you have a magnetic field. Now the heart is your magnet.
Yeah, exactly. So I've experienced that.
I love that.
And now it's like I searched for that. And actually, he even said, like, what was nice is when we were doing the meditations and you get into it, and I suggested to anybody, if you're in a moment where you're feeling really bliss, close your eyes and just say silently to yourself, remember this feeling. Because this is how we get to activate it. But when you're in the state in which he just described, everything is possible. When you're down here, everything is possible as a T-shirt or a bumper sticker. Here, you see everything is possible. So then it's like, how do I get there? And that's the work. You know, you might be there for a moment in time, but it's worth an hour meditation. It really is. To me, it's worth 2-hour meditation. It's worth me going to Cancun for 7 days. It's worth me for doing this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Never ending it. And that's, you know, the way he explains it and teaches it, it's profound. It really is.
Well, I love the way that, you know, he's describing, you know, the actual physical feeling of it, you know, the heart swelling up where you can feel, you know, that sensation. But on top of that, the visuals that he uses, like as far as like the pebble being dropped in the water, and just how our energy, you know, moves, you know, and expands out of us. This is such a good mental tool for us who are working on ourselves to visualize, you know, mentally and think about what we're doing. You know, there is very much a science to this practice. And just now, you know, with improvements in science and, you know, math and all this, we're now realizing that everything these mystics were talking about thousands of years ago is absolutely true.
Now we're coming to understand.
Yeah, because we can now explain these phenomenon
and
through
experience it.
That's the biggest
everything.
Thing, and experience it.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have it in, you know, epigenetics, neuroplasticity, quantum physics, you name it. And now we have a science behind
that's showing you what's happening as it occurs. So yeah.
And so I love that.
Yeah, and so me and Mike are always encouraging, listen, don't take our word for any of this. Go look it up. Go study it. Look at the science behind it. And then most of all, practice it and simultaneously look it up. Because the more I practice it and get it, now I want to search for more information, to get me to understand it. So it's never going to end. But if we don't do the practice, you can have all the information stored up in memory, but you're not going to get to the place of feeling. I don't want to talk about it. I want to feel it. But me and Mike are here to share our experience with things, and that's what Perspective Shift's about.
That's it. You know, at the end of the day, we want you guys to use your perspective, you know, and see why, what this tool is that we have, this ability to look at any given situation from a different angle.
Yeah, we are technology. Let's start using it, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, me and Mike, we love you all out there, and
love you guys.
Just sit with yourself once in a while and see what happens.
We'll see you next week.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
All right. If you like what you see, go down below and click subscribe, and because if you do that, we keep this thing going. And if you have any comments, please go in there. We love the comments. We love answering them, stuff like that. We'll write it back, but we'll also bring it up in the next podcast. All right. Peace out, people.
See you next week, guys.
All right.